Teresa Duffy Anderson was born in October around 1890 in Grubbs Landing, Delaware. She was the youngest in a family of at least 4 girls. Her parents, Patrick and Mariah Duffy, came to the United States in 1872 from Ireland, where her father had been a school teacher. The family settled in Philadelphia, where she went to school and eventually met her husband, John Shriver Anderson. He was a Protestant and she was Catholic, so when they married in 1910, her husband's family disowned him. Together they had 3 children, Teresa, John, and James. Her husband became a Philadelphia firefighter, and in 1918, when their youngest child, James, was 5 months old, he was tragically killed in the line of duty. In the same year, she also lost both her mother and her father. As a widow, Teresa was offered a job by the city with the Philadelphia Police Department, and it was then that she became a police matron. She raised her 3 children above the police station at the corner of 4th and Snyder in South Philadelphia. She never remarried. This photograph was taken when she had 20 years in the police department. After retiring, she and her daughter moved to a small house just outside of Atlantic City, New Jersey, where she lived until near the end of her life at age 96. James Anderson, known as Jim, was born in Philadelphia on March 19, 1918, to John and Teresa Anderson. He was only 5 months old when his father died and had no interaction with anyone in his father's family. Very little is known about them. The streets of South Philly were his playground, and he had a knack for mischief. Amongst his friends were some of the Hollowell brothers, which is how he met his future wife, Honey. They had 5 children, James, Elizabeth, John, Maureen, and Kathleen. They primarily raised their children in a home they bought in Folsom, a suburb of Philadelphia. He was a sheet metal mechanic and eventually came to work in aviation, making helicopters and ending up in management later in his career. He worked for Piasecki, Boeing, and MBB. After retirement, he helped start the American Helicopter Museum in Westchester, Pennsylvania, working to restore helicopters for the museum's collection. He was a devoted family man and member of the Knights of Columbus, and he was known for his love of life, his adventurous spirit, and his wisecracking jokes and stories. After a brief battle with lung cancer, he died on December 14, 2008, at the age of 90. Jim and Honey knew each other through her brothers for several years as young teenagers before they started dating. They dated for many years before getting engaged. Together they belonged to a motorcycle club, where Honey would ride on the back of Jim's Harley on outings with the club. Occasionally, on overnight trips, Honey would be allowed to go as long as she was chaperoned by her future sister-in-law, Teresa. Jim also owned an airplane, a J-2 Piper Cub. He sold it to buy Honey an engagement ring. They were married in November of 1941 at the Bellevue Stratford in Philadelphia, and they traveled by train to Miami for their honeymoon. Samuel Hallowell is believed to have been born around 1878 in Philadelphia, and his wife, Elizabeth Anderson, known as Lizzie, is believed to have been born around 1885 in Brooklyn, New York. Her father was a Danish shipbuilder named Jacob Anderson. Together they had 6 children, Samuel, Enos, Irvin, Grover, Elizabeth, and Harry. They are pictured here with their oldest child, Samuel Jr. They primarily raised their children in Philadelphia, although they did farm for some time in Parksburg, Pennsylvania. Samuel died in 1923, when the youngest child, Harry, was only 2 years old. Lizzie became a single mother widow, raising several children during the Great Depression. The story is that she scrubbed laundry and did cleaning to make ends meet. They were very poor, and she had a difficult life. In her later years, she went to live in New Jersey with her son and daughter-in-law. It is because she struggled so much in life that her only daughter, Elizabeth, was determined that her own 3 daughters would all get a higher education so they could make a good living on their own. She died in 1969 and is buried at Fernwood Cemetery. Elizabeth Hallowell was born in February of 1919, the fifth of 6 children and the only daughter of Samuel and Elizabeth Hallowell. As a child, she was known as Honey, and later, as an adult, she was called Betty. She was 4 when her father died, and she mostly grew up in South Philly, where they were very poor. She converted to Catholicism sometime before her marriage in 1941. Throughout her life, she remained close with her younger brother Harry, but did not do so with her older brothers. When she was first married, she worked sewing leather in a factory in Philadelphia. She raised 5 children, and when they were grown, she worked as a sales associate for Clover, the department store spin-off of Strawbridge and Clothier. Throughout his life, she was a good sport and willing sidekick to her husband's adventurous antics. She's a loving and supportive grandmother, and she has a good sense of humor. She made her own life in this world, preferring to leave her past in the past, although she does tell good stories, and it is because of her that I would like to someday try pepper hash and hot dog soup. She's very passionate about religion and politics. She cared for her husband until his death a few months before her 90th birthday, and remained in the same house where they raised their children until she was 93, when she finally moved to a retirement home.